Good morning, everyone. I hope you're well. Right, today we're going to get into our presentation and we're going to look at how you can maximize your IT budgets. And this is going to be an interesting one because we've got lots of funding and there's new sort of funding pool pots available, which I'll go into and provide you a bit of an update about what's going on in Microsoft land in terms of funding, as well as techniques you can learn to improve your adoptions and your budgets. So there's the agenda, but let's get straight into it. My name is Leon Godwin. I am the Principal Cloud Evangelist here at Cloud Direct. I have built it and broke it in every cloud, and my job is to help you on your cloud journey. So it's prospects, customers, colleagues alike. I share my knowledge. I'm not in sales. I'm just here to help share my knowledge with people to deliver better outcomes. I'm particularly prolific on LinkedIn. And I'm very passionate about AI. That's an area I spend an awful lot of time studying, researching, creating, and I've created some very, very cool things, even though that's far from a core skill set. And if I can do it, then anybody can do it. So if you're interested, you can follow me on LinkedIn, where as I say, I'm quite prolific in terms of the number of articles and posts quite regularly on there. Okay. Without further ado, let's jump in. So there is a new reality that is going on when it comes to the cloud journey. Before, people would see cloud as kind of an opportunity to change hosting environments. And that might have been, I had a VMware estate and now I'm moving to Azure. And to be fair, that is the wrong mindset to go in with, because there are so many more capabilities within the cloud. But then this is also offset by challenging budget environment. Organizations say, let's say you have a compelling event within your organizations, your hardware estate has reached the end of its life, or you have operating systems that are reaching their end of life. These can, migrating from a CapEx based model to an OpEx based model, can be advantageous to a lot of organizations, and often moving to Azure can extend the lifespan of operating systems that wouldn't receive patches unless they were residing in Azure, because there's a special extension that goes on for workloads in Azure. And avoiding large capital purchases for new hardware that's end of life. And of course, the other thing is you've probably all noticed over the last few years, the rate of technology is changing. And when you have a CapEx based procurement life cycle, you tend not to have significant changes in the services and capabilities. They tend to marry that sort of 5-year stepping life cycle, whereas having an OpEx based model means that you can pivot to say, there's a new threat on the landscape I need to adopt, there's a new capability, let's say AI, I want to start making use of that. Being in the cloud and having an OpEx based model, so it means you can move away from X and move towards Y really, really quickly. The speed of innovation in the cloud is much faster, and the speed of adoption in the cloud is significantly faster. So whether you're looking to address, you're on this call today potentially because you're looking to migrate to Azure, you might be looking to improve your security posture, you might be looking to develop a business case for your move to Azure, or support a myriad of other reasons. If that is the case, then you are very much on the right webinar. So one of the reasons why we have seen an awful lot of success in this space in terms of migrating customers is we are heavily certified. There are lots and lots of CSPs. To be honest, anyone in their bedroom can register and become a CSP. To become an expert MSP, there's actually only a handful of those in the UK. One of the things we're very proud of is we've secured more funding from Microsoft than any other provider in the UK. So we work really tightly with Microsoft. Now, I was in their offices last week. This is a very tight relationship, and we secure funding and access to funding incredibly quickly and to a larger scale than any other provider in the UK. So what are those funding opportunities? So if we explore this slide, there's a funding pot, which the reason most of you are here is the Azure migration. This is, I want to adopt Azure and I haven't done yet, or I have done, but I've still got a whole load of other workloads that I've yet to migrate. There is a funding program available, and you can see that some of the funding is provided as a joint venture between Microsoft and ourselves. Some of it's just through ourselves and some of it's just through Microsoft, and some of it we can provide as a paid for service. But understanding what the funding opportunities are can help reduce the cost of change. And that's the key thing. The change is about having a structured approach. So one of the things that we align to is something called the Cloud Adoption Framework. Cloud Adoption Framework is a best practice approach to adopting cloud. We are accredited and certified in everything you can imagine. And we bring that expertise and access to the funding, which means the cost of change for you as organizations is reduced. Now, that change might be a migration. It might be an application modernization that you want to move further up the cloud stack. It might be that you want to implement a center of excellence or adopt data and AI. So some of the interesting news updates that have gone on is there's an additional 15% worth of funding available for those that are doing database migrations that use Defender. There's an extra 15% of money available for those migrations. There's also the ability, we can go and nominate organizations that want to go on an AI journey and deliver an AI outcome. There's access to funding. Now, we have to get those nominations in by the 30th of June this year. But the program doesn't have, that's just a nomination. Even if the actual outcome isn't achieved in financial year 24, that's not a problem. The point is the nomination. So if you're looking for, to adopt modern work, data and AI, improve your security, modernize your applications, adopt more cultural changes in your organization, such as CCOE and DevOps, or you're just simply looking to migrate to the cloud for the first time, there are huge pots of money available, and I strongly recommend that you make use of them. So let's explore some of those. First, we're going to look at the Azure migration. So this particular pot of funding there is a structure to how it's delivered. And there are, if you like, let's call them payment milestones for want of a better expression. Initially, there's a workshop where we discuss with you some core principles, and we share the knowledge with you around the Cloud Adoption Framework and a subset framework, which is called the Well-Architected Framework, which I'll touch on a bit more. What this does is we impart knowledge to you, but at the same time, we need to understand, what are your business goals? What is your strategy? And what are you looking to achieve? Understanding that sets the scene. And we can go and execute against that, and invariably there would be no cost to that, or nearly always no cost to that. We can also then do a discovery. What is going on in your estate? Let's have a look at your desktops, your 365, your Exchange, your VMware estate, whatever it is. We're discovering something, your personnel, depending on what funding pot. In this particular case, Migrate, we'd be looking at your IT estate, and we would do that discovery aligned with what we call the well-architected review. In fact, not what we call, the industry, what Microsoft calls the well-architected review. And we understand your current state. And then one of the big mistakes organizations make, especially those that do DIY, just off piste for a moment. I was reading an article, number of cloud migration projects that are failing, the rate is actually going up. And the reason behind it is the scarcity of resource that is experienced means more people doing the DIY approach. And because of the nuance involved in a migration, that's actually increasing the failure rates because more people are trying it through the DIY approach. I thought anecdotally that was interesting. So what we do is we build out a landing zone. So a landing zone is kind of like, if you're building a house or street houses, you would start off by putting your scaffolding up. And so this is your digital scaffolding. You would make sure that your perimeter is secure with the correct certified locks and doors and windows. You'd have your monitoring so you could see through those windows. And it's a similar story. You divide up the internal component of the house, so different areas perform different functions. You would do all those things before you moved your furniture in. In this case, the walls are sort of your scaffolding, your digital scaffolding, are the things that account for scale and how the uniqueness of your environment that allows it to scale securely and in a structured way. And you do all that before you deliver your workloads. And this is a key step that is often missed. And it's really, really crucial that you actually say, right, I want something. You didn't just say, I want a building, and you end up with a shed. When you wanted a mansion, you put your landing zone together, say, this is how I'm going to architect this before my workloads go in. And then we would undertake a proof of concept or a pilot if that is appropriate for your circumstance. It might not be, so we don't have, that's an optional step. But if we've done a pilot or a proof of concept, there will be information that comes out of that that would inform a design for your specific workloads, and then ultimately we'd have that deployment executed and put in place, again aligned with the well-architected framework. So think of the cloud adoption framework as this is your guiding parent thing, and I would strongly recommend those of you looking to actually, to be fair, it's important even if you've already moved to the cloud, it's a set of guiding principles to plan and to maintain, and then the well-architected framework that is more a bit more technical, and I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail. So to bring this to life, yes, Leon, this is all very interesting, but what does it mean? Well, in this particular case, we did an assessment for an organisation. 140 of their servers were migrated to the cloud. They ended up 65% of the costs were covered, the cost of change were covered by Microsoft or Cloud Direct, meaning they only had to, the cost of change for them was only 35% of the cost of change because of all the skin in the game that everyone else put. So you can see these aren't insignificant amounts of money. And this is not only are you getting that funding available to execute that change, it's being executed by someone who's massively experienced. Why you would go down a DIY route, I don't know. And then we can think about, okay, that's great, but too many organizations just think of cloud as being an alternative place to host your VMs. And that kind of fundamentally misses out on the key benefits that are available in the cloud. For me, it's all about modernizing and moving up the cloud stack so you can have a smaller, more efficient footprint, so you end up spending less, but you get more value, more for less. And just migrating your workloads from A to B is not really maximizing that value. So if we explore that in a little bit more detail, this is the default that most organizations do. I've got a traditional data center, I've got some VMs, I've got some storage and a comms room, whatever. I've got a bunch of kit. I'm going to migrate the VMs over to Azure, and then they stop there. Yes, there is funding available for that, and we've just touched on that. But in my opinion, that's the wrong place to stop because you end up with quite a large footprint. But if you move up the cloud stack and start enjoying the benefits of more advanced services. So for example, you could have a Windows server with SQL Server on it, or you can have Azure SQL, which is a platform as a service, includes a load of included managements. It scales automatically, it's backed up automatically, it's patched automatically, it comes with a whole load of capabilities, and often the monthly cost of that is actually less than just the sticker price of the VM. So actually adopting these platforms as a service, I always say platform as a service where you can, infrastructure as a service where you have to. For me, infrastructure as a service is your fallback position of last resort. If you can adopt containers, that is something that's hugely powerful and massively drives down cost. So if that is available to you, that would be great. And of course, there are funding to help with those activities. If you've got web services, websites, stick them on the web app service. If you have any AI capabilities, perhaps not, but you can move and modernize towards that landscape. And one of the things all these things have in common is it's all data. We think about migration in terms of servers, but actually what we're doing, we're actually just migrating data. Yes, that data happens to be an operating system, but at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of ones and zeros. And actually thinking about data in more of a holistic sense, you can actually start doing some really clever things, because a lot of those machines and databases and websites contain information that would be really valuable and useful for AI services. And I've done a whole load of stuff. I've built an AI now that can build me AIs, and it's really, I cannot write code at all, but that journey to start getting really cool. I've built a research assistant. It's magnificent. I can give it like 5 subjects to go and research, something that might take me several hours, and within a couple of minutes I've got a really detailed breakdown, both the research and insights into those research and different perspectives. Makes it much easier. So moving up that cloud stack to get access to those, and of course you have that funding pot available and that nomination available for that AI service. Now, this mistake, I think, is the mistake I see more often than not. Yeah, if you forget everything I've told you today, just remember 2 things. There's free money available, and size you and adopt your cloud correctly. And this is an example of how people fail to address the cost optimization concern. In fact, we do have a program where we can talk to you about cost optimization, aside from Microsoft. So right sizing, one of the things that I often see is when users take a VM, for example, from an on-prem estate to the cloud, they think, well, I've got 4 CPUs here, so I need 4 CPUs there. The problem is maybe that was a virtualized estate, and maybe your maybe 1 physical CPU core on your server was split into 4 vCPU cores. So actually, you don't need that many. The other reason is that equipment's really old, and technology has, if you understand Moore's law, things. The number of transistors double every 2 years. It's you have significantly more. So actually, whilst you might have 4 cores in Azure, which has a contention ratio of 1:1, 1 core is 1 vCPU core. That is, yeah, you might only need 1 CPU core. So actually size for what you need, not what you have. Right, contracting, you can go and do reserved instances or savings plans that allow where you say, right, I know I'm not going to be getting rid of this VM anytime soon. It's my domain controller. It's absolutely critical and it's not going anywhere. I will make a commitment for 1 year or 3 years, and in return, Microsoft will say, great, we'll give you a big discount. If you are eligible to bring your own license, Microsoft will provide you licensing. So let's say you're an organization that has an enterprise agreement with Microsoft. Generally speaking, you're personally negotiating those enterprise agreements. And if you're good at it, generally speaking, those rates will be much better than retail rates. And if you can bring your own license and bring and contract on reserved instances, we're talking like 75% plus discounts on VMs. It can be profound. Does 100% of your IT estate need to be on 100% of the time? Does it need to be that size 100% of the time? Shrinking and contracting your estate, or powering up and powering down elements of your estate, can have significant benefits in costs. So let me bring that to life. Here we have what's called a D2V3. It's just a server. It's just the name of a server. It's got 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. In every scenario, it's the same server you're buying. If you buy pay as you go, you're looking at £112 for that server for a month. But if you've got a 3 years reserved instance and you're bringing your own license, now it's only £27. Actually, if you only need, instead of having it done 24/7, so 24/7 means roughly 730 hours in a month. Whereas if you only run it 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, let's say, you're an organization that doesn't operate at weekends or massively scaled down at weekends, then some of your VMs can power down. That's roughly 12 hours a day, 5 days a week is roughly 264 hours. That's 1/3, that's 2/3 of the compute costs that you could potentially save there. And likewise, 8x5 would even be more aggressive. And there's something called spot instances. If you've got VMs that they can be ephemeral in nature, that you can basically rent the unused capacity off Microsoft, and that comes at a massive discount. In this case, you can see you can either have £112 down to £5 variance depending on your needs and your use case. Pulling on these cost-saving levers, I cannot stress it enough, can make a profound difference, and it is the mistake that most organizations fail to recognize, and they end up paying too much. So then we talk about modernization. So again, the logic works the same. These payment milestones, for want of a better description, very, very similar. But in this case, we're looking at to say which of, if we look at your estate, some of them you'll retire, some of them you'll rationalize, but some of them you might want to re-architect and actually do something a little bit more substantively change impacting within your organization. So we understand your estate and your desire in that initial workshop, and what your goals for modernization. We explain the art of the possible to you. And then we do a discovery, so actually understand the technical components and the dependencies within an architecture. And then we can put together landing zone pilots and designs, and then ultimately we will we can go and deploy the outcome of your modernized application. So let me bring that to life with some examples. There was a leisure company that we work with, that wanted to modernize their IT estate, so rather than a migration and modernization program, and they wanted these different activities that are sort of boxed here: the workshop, discovery, landing zone, and the PAC. And you can see collectively there was 40,000 in costs to go and do this for this particular organization. And sorry, I've done the maths wrong. Those are up to, that's the funding pot available. It was about £35,000, which Microsoft and Cloud Direct just covered 100% of those activities. And then we did the actual design and implementation components, and that required not only did we get all that funding covered for that activity, actually we even, because we've got a tight relationship with Microsoft, we even managed to get them the first month of usage completely free. So they did the change, and effectively in this particular case they had experts deliver the change. Obviously there's a time commitment on their part, and it is a program of change, but from a funding point of view, huge amounts of the funding was covered by either Cloud Direct or Microsoft, or both together. And I love this use case. You can actually see these use cases on Microsoft's website. There's some really, really good stories, as Microsoft call them, on their website. Some of them are really, really interesting. And if you're, thinking about making changes within your organization, just have a look. Other people have trodden this path before. Let's stand on the shoulder of giants and learn from it together. So in this particular case, the NHS hospital had the electronic patient record system in place, but it was deployed effectively to the nurses' stations at the end of the wards, and the clinicians would effectively, it was not being used terribly effectively. Nurses would update that information, but it wasn't a massively used clinical tool. So what this program of change did with funding was they procured 200 electronic whiteboards. And they also developed a mobile app for the electronic healthcare system. As a result, now clinicians, no matter where they are, can gain access to real-time information from the electronic patient records rather than it be very, very static. As a result of that, there's now 7 million requests to that electronic patient record system, a profound increase in its usage. And when clinicians are more up to date and they get access to more up to date information, that results in better healthcare outcomes for patients. So I think that's a really, really cool example of an organization saying, I've got something, it could be better. Let's put a program of change in place. Let's get some funding to help assist with that change and deliver real world benefits, in this case, to patients. So we've just effectively just covered off, and this is regrouping on that original slide. We have an extra 15% available for in certain use cases for migration, for database migrations. We have the funding pots available for migrations. We have the ability to access funding for modernization. You have changes within your organizations around DevOps and Cloud Center of Excellence. Those can be really, really useful. Data and AI, understanding the art of the possible in that space, really, really valuable. And you know, it is a profound technology change for those that know how to exploit it for their business benefit. And of course, there's security and modern work. Modern work will cover everything from M365 to AVD to secure score, and those elements around that are adjacent to M365. So lots and lots of funding opportunities available. So how do you do it? Really, really easy. Microsoft break these projects up into certain phases. So you have your plan ready and adopt phase, which is Microsoft's parlance for, you know, let me understand what it is, how much is it going to cost, what do I need to be able to build it and get it designed and what have you, and execute on that. That's the kind of, obviously there's a strategy piece and a maintenance piece that comes after, but in terms of the migration piece, that's the scope. And it's really, really easy. Book a meeting with one of my colleagues and we will understand that your particular needs, and we will set about putting together a cost for you that would be your cost model for the migration to Azure, and then we send it to Microsoft and say how much of this will you fund. And generally speaking, we see between 60 and 100% of the funding, depending on a particular organisation and its size and needs. That's usually where the funding pot comes back. So it's a really simple process. If you want it, speak with one of our experts. You'll work with them to understand the information that's needed to come up with that cost model. Once you've got that cost model, submit it to Microsoft, and you get, and generally speaking, depending on the day of the week, it's usually 24, 48 hours to get a response from Microsoft from the funding side of things. It's quite quick. So you can get in a position, if you are now thinking, right, I want to adopt Azure, book a session with one of our people. We'll have that conversation. We'll put that together, that outline cost model together. We'll send it to Microsoft, and you'll find out what funding is available for your change. So holistically, if we, just before I sort of wrap up, think of Cloud Journey as a set of building blocks. I'm building something for the future. So migrate to the cloud. We've kind of covered that off in this, in terms of there are funding available, there are adoption techniques, there's tools available, which we haven't covered off, but I do cover off in other sessions, that will help you manage and maintain and have that visibility and control of your costs going forward. There are additional security advantages to being in the cloud. Understanding what those capabilities are, making use of them, is really, really useful, especially as some of them can be cost neutral. They are just native features that you can just enable, or some of them obviously do have a cost. Maybe you need to store log files or whatever. They're understanding that capability, and also understanding where your performance bottlenecks are, if any, and how to address them. And equally, that also applies for over provisioning as well. And then modernizing, we've discussed here about how organizations and funding that's available for modernizing. There are other workshops that go into all these in more detail. And then we have the more mature side of things, that people are moving up the cloud stack. So is your data modern and accessible in the cloud? That's really crucial if you want to carry on up to the higher floors of this particular building. Do you want to make data-driven decisions within your organization? And do you have access? Now that data is accessible, are you able to run analytics against that data? And are you able to implement an AI strategy? Because AI uses the fuel it uses to drive its engine is data. by making that data accessible can help support an AI strategy. Now, the reason I mention all these is actually I have an upcoming webinar where I'll cover off those higher steps in more detail so you can understand the art of the possible when it comes to AI within your organization and what you can do and what the art of the possible is with an AI. Obviously, it's I think an hour webinar, but the sign up link is on the page, so screen grab now. Yeah, the 5 stages to successful AI adoption. I'll be delivering that later on in the month. So I think we are now at past. So this is an opportunity. If you have any questions, now is the chance to ask them. Failing that, you saw my Leon Godwin. Find me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me and then I can put you in touch with whomever, or I can answer your questions directly. So unless Ollie tells me there is a question, I will shut the call down now.
We have one question so far, Leon. Someone has asked, they said that you may have already covered it, but are all of CloudDirect's assessments around Azure funded?
Are all the assessments around Azure funded? I don't know of any scenario where they're not. So I think reasonably confident, yes. I'm trying to think of a scenario where they wouldn't be, but yeah, pretty much if you want to do that assessment, yes, I think they are all funded. There we go. Yeah, so yeah, if you look at workshop number 1 in the column, we've got colours in all of them. So the answer is yes. If you have any specific questions you want to drill into about that, then you can feel free to reach out to my colleagues. These are all the contact details there, and obviously you can contact me directly via LinkedIn, and I will point you in the right direction. Any more questions, Ollie?
None at the moment. I'll just leave it 20 seconds just in case anyone has any last minute ones.
Sure, absolutely. And in the meantime, do have a look at the website to see we have a number of webinar events, and some of those may be of interest to you. I appreciate we've all got busy days. We try to position them at 10 o'clock, thinking, well, 9 o'clock you want to get in, do your coffee, deal with any sort of emails, and we position them at 10 o'clock. But if there are any of those activities that you would be interested in and you think that would be valuable for your organizations, then yeah, please go to our website and have a look at that, at those different webinars. We do several every month.